You are listening to the Bat Flip Podcast, a baseball podcast from Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network. Here are your hosts, Damian and Matt.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Bat Flip Podcast. My name is Damian here with my co-host, Matt, coming to you on June 14th of 2022. Got some injury news to start with, and then we are going to jump into the All-Star Game ballots now that Phase 1 of the voting has begun. But before we get into that, how are you doing, Matt?
Doing pretty good. Just trying to get over this heat wave we've got going on here in the southeast. It's been about 100 degrees, and I think our heat index is probably like 115 with all the humidity. So it's been pretty swampy feeling the last few days. But ready to get into it, talk a little baseball.
Yeah, the heat is luckily not hitting the central part of California as much yet, so I'm lucky for that, but definitely I'm not looking forward to those days, even though the difference between yours and mine is yours is a lot more muggy and ours just feels like we're burning. So, but let's go ahead and we'll jump right into the injury news. The first part of it will start with the Atlanta Braves second baseman Ozzie Albies ended up fracturing his foot yesterday during an at-bat.
Yeah, it was a really weird situation. He just took an awkward swing and kind of rolled his ankle over in his swing, and it broke a bone in his foot. So they did put him on the 60-day IL, which kind of sucks because that means he will be out for at least 2 months. Whereas we didn't really know, anything. When they say broken foot, it could be, sometimes that's like a 3 or 4 week recovery, and sometimes that's a season-ending type thing. You just don't know. There's a lot of different bones and pieces in your foot. So really a bummer. But the Braves, who have won 12 straight games and are winning big right now tonight, and they're trying to win their 13th straight game. Hurts to lose him. The good thing for the Braves is that Orlando Arcia has been playing pretty well when he's played off the bench. So they do have somebody in-house that has got a lot of major league experience and can man that. And Ozzie shouldn't be out for the year. He should return at some point. So for the playoff push, but definitely a bummer to lose your all-star second baseman. But hopefully Ozzie gets well soon and comes back as good as ever.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a big loss, especially just the clubhouse guy that Ozzie is to that team. He's usually one of the ones providing most of the fun for that team, keeping them loose every day. So they're going to miss that. He hasn't been the greatest offensively this year, but you still don't say like, hey, you're going to miss that bat in your lineup, even though RC is probably going to fill in just fine for them. But it definitely sucks for the Braves. The next part of injury news we have is that the Los Angeles Dodgers starter Walker Buehler had to leave the game. I believe it was on Friday night with a right flexor strain in his elbow, and looks like he'll be shut down for 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I think we might have talked about this once or twice, but Walker Buehler has been struggling this year compared to normal. And, there was a lot of talk about wondering why. His fastball velocity's been a little bit down from when he first came up, and he hadn't had great command of his pitches, and he's just been a little off. And I'm wondering if that maybe there was some kind of effect from this starting the season. But the good news is that, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a Tommy John thing. When I heard elbow injury, I was like, uh-oh. So hopefully he'll be back at some point, late in the season, getting ready for a playoff push.
Yeah, so that was the initial concern, was obviously a UCL and Tommy John surgery. But another thing that actually I found out late today, when he did his first kind of talking with the media, is he actually had a bone spur in his pitching elbow as well. That had been bothering him the whole year. So that could be another issue why a lot of the velocity and command had went down. He actually went ahead and got that removed as well. And that doesn't really affect the timeline from where he's going to be. But he said he hopes to be back in like 10 weeks. But I think that's going to be I think that's kind of on the fast side. I wouldn't be surprised to see him on the 12 to 13 week area, especially how we know the Dodgers are usually very concerned with their pitchers' health and usually slow play them a lot more than other teams usually do. So Walker Buehler is going to be a massive blow to that team who had already had question marks with the rotation around Kershaw, who just came back on Saturday, Andrew Heaney, who's been out as well. Dustin May hasn't pitched. He had Tommy John last year. He's supposed to be back sometime late this year. And then the bullpen's faced a little bit of injuries as well. So you needed your ace and Walker Buehler to kind of be that guy this year. And it sucks that he has to go through his arm issues. Just sometimes what you got to deal with,
That's why it pays to have a lot of good pitchers.
It does. It really does. And that's why pitching depth can never be overstated enough. But staying in the NL West and talking about probably the best player in that division with Fernando Tatis Jr. had a CT scan today to update on his wrist. Didn't show the improvement in the healing that the Padres were kind of hoping. So his return to swinging a bat will still be delayed for a little while.
Yeah, that's a big time bummer for San Diego. Is as it's been stated so many times, how good Fernando Tatis Jr. is, um, and the fact that they're chasing down the Dodgers right now and look to be every bit as good. The pitching's been really good for San Diego. The bats have really been the quiet part for them this year. As some of their guys haven't really fully gotten going. Guys like Trent Grisham hadn't really fully got going. Cronenworth hadn't fully gotten going. So if they can get those guys go, they really need to have Tatis Jr. back to really push to win this division. And they were hoping that wasn't too far down the line, but it sounds like it might be a little bit further than they were expecting. So hopefully he gets better pretty soon, and we get to see one of the more fun young stars in the game come back soon.
Yeah, the game really needs a guy like Fernando Tatis Jr. to be healthy and to come there and help in that division push. Luckily, it still sounds like he should be back, sometime late July, early August, as long as everything kind of keeps moving along at some pace at least. But that the Padres they have proven that they are really good, and they're right there with the Dodgers, and they're going to need Tatis in that late run when they face the Dodgers 9 times in September. So as long as you can stay in striking distance and get Tatis back, in the second half of the season and make that push, you got to do it. But it still seems like they're going to be a playoff team. So as long as you have them healthy for the playoffs, I think that's what really matters. Well, let's go ahead and jump into our all-star ballot. We're just going to basically fill out a ballot for the show. We'll each give who we initially think should make it, and then we'll agree on a guy eventually. But let's go ahead and start with the American League and first base. So who do you feel like is your the call at first base in the American League?
Yeah, so I really think this is kind of a runaway for the most part. I think that Ty France is definitely the guy. He's played 61 games, hit 324 on the season, a 401 on base, 485 slugging, 163 WRC plus, 9 home runs. This is a guy that's just really, really, really good, and he's really carried the Mariners for a lot of the season. The other guys that could maybe be involved, you could talk a little bit about Luis Arias. He's always been that very low strikeout guy. I don't know if he's on the ballot for first base because he's
He
kind of a
is.
utility guy. But okay, so since he's on the ballot for first base, we can talk about him. Um, and he's a guy that I mean you could probably throw him in there, and I mean you can always throw Vlad Jr. in there, but this has been a down year for him compared to what I think his typical season's going to be. Although I think a lot of it's batting average on balls in play driven, that he's had some bad luck, and I think he's going to have a huge second half. So, but as of right now, I think Ty France should definitely be the pick here in the American League.
Yeah, I agree with Ty France. Luis Arias is another name for sure. Another name that is on the ballot for first base, even though he probably hasn't played a majority of his games there, is G-Man Choi. He's had a really good start to the season as well. A 284 average, a 372 on base, 485 slugging with a 150 WRC plus. He's on the ballot as a first baseman. So he's another guy you could probably look at there. But I do agree. I think Ty France is far and away the kind of runaway with this position for sure. But we'll jump over to the National League, and I really feel in the National League it's probably a 2-horse race at the top right now, leading with Paul Goldschmidt and Pete Alonso.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious here that Paul Goldschmidt's the best first baseman in the National League right now. Coming into tonight, had a 335 average, 419 on base, and a 598 slugging, but that was coming into tonight. Tonight he hit 3 home runs. So he's actually had 8 plate appearances tonight.
They have a
But
doubleheader.
Oh, okay. So I didn't realize that, but he had 3 home runs today. He now has a 349 average, 429 on base, a 642 slugging, and a very cool 200 WRC plus on the season. This guy's far and beyond the best first baseman in the National League right now. I think you got Pete Alonso's been really good too. Um, you know, he's cut down on his strikeouts a lot, and has a high average for him compared to typical. Um, I think you look at Freddie Freeman's been pretty good, but he hadn't quite been his typical at the plate. 131 WRC plus is pretty solid. The on base percentage at 368 is a little bit lower than we are used to seeing from him, but of course, hitting seems to be down around the league in general. So, but yeah, this has been I really think Paula Goldschmidt is pretty easily the pick here.
Yeah, I think first base was kind of easy. I think the definitely two far and away runaways with that position for sure. But let's jump into the American League second base, where you have guys like Jose Altuve probably leading the vote. You have other guys. Trevor Story's had a renaissance late, but I don't think it's enough to really get up to the level that Jose Altuve is kind of at right now.
Yeah, I mean Jose Altuve is definitely the guy here. He's only played 46 games, which is pretty low. I mean, a lot of these guys played 60. I know he dealt with I think maybe a hamstring injury in the first month of the season, but I mean, in only 46 games, he's already just a tenth of a point of WAR behind Santiago Espinal, who actually leads second baseman in WAR right now in the American League. But Jose Altuve has been insane. He's got a 279 average, which is honestly a little bit lower than his peripherals are showing. But a 347 on base, 536 slugging. He's already hit 12 home runs, and that's only in that 46 games. A 154 WRC plus. He's playing good defense. Base running could maybe be a little bit better, but he's been the best second baseman in the American League, and definitely deserves that All Star nod.
So here's another name I wanted to throw at you because it's on the ballot for second base, and I don't quite know. He's played 32 games at second base this year and 16 at shortstop. So I guess it does is valid that he's on here as a second base. But Andres Jimenez is kind of an
Yep.
interesting name. He's a guy who has a 303 average this year, 339 on base, 523 slugging. 7 homers already is phenomenal for him. A 143 WRC plus, and he's really good defensively. Like I'm actually now the more I look at it, I might actually lean Andres Jimenez. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean Andres Jimenez has been really good. I don't think he's qualified for the batting title right now. Might be why he wasn't. Yeah, he actually does lead in WAR at. He's played 48 games actually, but his plate appearances are 166 plate appearances. So that sample size does matter to me. That he's only had, he still had like 50 less plate appearances than Altuve, even though he's played 2 more games. But yeah, I mean Andres Jimenez has been really good. A lot of it is BABIP fueled, but that defense is incredible. He's hit for power, which is something we didn't really expect from him coming in. So, but yeah, I mean you could pick between the two pretty easily. I would probably still lean Altuve, but
All right.
I mean Andres Jimenez is right there too.
Yeah, we'll go without Tuve, but Jimenez is definitely somebody
Yeah.
to watch
He
for
should.
in future
I think
ballots.
he ought to be on the team. But
Yeah,
I don't know
for
about.
sure.
Yeah.
For sure. All right, well, let's look at second base for the National League, and it's led by guys like Jazz Chisholm. Ozzie would probably be in the conversation at some point, but I think it's really down. Jeff McNeil's another guy that you could probably make. I think Jeff McNeil and Jazz Chisholm are probably the two that we're going to be deciding through.
Yeah. I definitely think Jeff McNeil and Jazz Chisholm are the two. This is a tough one because Jazz Chisholm is electrifying and he's really fun to watch. But, you look at some of his numbers and, he's got a sub 300 on base percentage right now, which is pretty rough. He does have a 130 WRC plus, a 531 slugging. But he's dropped 72 points of on base percentage from what Jeff McNeil's put up. I think the big difference here is that Jazz Chisholm 10 stolen bases and a really solid glove at second base. I think is the big difference here between the two. So I probably would pick Jazz Chisholm, but this is one of the closer picks for me between any position because both Jazz Chisholm and Jeff McNeil have both been really, really, really good, and it's tough to pick between those two guys because they're such different players too, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think that this is a runaway Jazz Chisholm easy. And I think that just is really to the way that Jeff McNeil's not as flashy as him. And I think it's a lot closer race than people, most of the national media will have you thinking it is. Jeff McNeil's really, really good, and I really considered him a lot for this award, or for this vote at least. He's another guy definitely should be on the team, but I think just right now, Jazz Chisholm has to be the pick, especially what he's done recently. After that team meeting they had, where I guess a lot of people were unhappy with him on the team, he's kind of rose to the occasion and kind of carried the team on his back a little bit as of late. So I definitely think that Jazz Chisholm's the pick, but Jeff McNeil it's really, really close. You couldn't go wrong picking either one of those two for sure.
Yeah.
But looking over to the American League third base side, who do you got over there?
So for the American League third base, I think that Rafael Devers and Jose Ramirez are two of the best players in baseball in general, and I think I lean to Jose Ramirez here. Um, he's just such a well-rounded hitter. A 292 average, 389 on base, 641 slugging. Those are incredible numbers. A 186 WRC plus. His batting average on balls in play is only a 254, and he's still got those numbers. 16 home runs. Now with his profile, he does hit the ball in the air a lot, which leads to a lower BABIP. So he just always runs a little bit of a lower batting average on balls in play. But man, you would think that would come up just a little bit. But he's also, he's a little bit above average defensively, and he's a good base runner. He's stolen 9 bases. I think you got to go with Jose Ramirez, although Rafael Devers is a very close second to me for me.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really, really tough. I think a lot of us came in this year expecting a guy like Devers to have this type of season, and he really has. We were all wondering with Jose Ramirez, he kind of struggled, at times over the last couple years. We weren't sure, especially with the contract looming there. He ends up signing that extension, taking less money to stay in Cleveland, and he's really showed out and been that all-star player and the leader of that club. It's another one of those scenarios where you couldn't go wrong picking either one of these. Um, me personally, I probably lean a little bit towards Devers more, just because of the strides I've seen Devers make, at least defensively. He's been a well above average defender so far this year, but Jose Ramirez just does so much. His base running, his stealing on the base paths, being kind of the only guy in that lineup that teams fear and still putting up these numbers. Whereas in Devers, he's in that lineup. He has Bogarts, he has JD Martinez, you have Trevor Story, you have Verdugo. Like, you have guys around there, so he has some protection. So I think that's probably what why Jose Ramirez will get more of the votes here. But Devers is very much in the conversation. Looking over at the National League side, though, you have Nolan Arenado, you have Manny Machado, you have Austin Riley, are kind of like the top three guys probably separating themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I think, and I think just for fun, you could throw a fourth in there too with Brian Hayes, and maybe even a fifth with I think is Brandon Drury on the ballot at third base.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so Brandon Drury's actually been really good this year too, but I do think those two are pretty far behind the top three. But I think you got to go with Manny Machado here. A 322 average, 391 on base, 530 slugging, 158 WRC plus. He's got the great glove at third base. He's just a really, really nice all around third baseman. Nolan Arenado has been great this year. Uh, you know, I think he's been he's been every bit as good as he was when he was in Colorado. But even at that, he should be an all-star. But I mean, Manny Machado is just having a spectacular season so far. Then Austin Riley's also been really good, but you know, he's just not quite as good as those other two. So
Yeah, and if you would have said earlier in the season, you could have had the talk when Nolan Arenado started the season insane as well. But it's Machado's really separated himself, especially as of the past like month or so. He's clear cut pick at third base in the National League for sure. So let's move over to the shortstop position, and you got guys like Tim Anderson, Xander Bogaerts, Carlos Correa, J.P. Crawford, Jeremy Pena. I mean, this is one of the harder discussions we're going to have, because I think there's at least a handful of players that are worthy at least to be in the conversation.
yeah, this is a really really tough one because I think Xander Bogaerts is one of my favorite players. Um, you look at Jeremy Pena as being, um, just a superstar in the making, and he's been a standout player for replacing Carlos Correa. And Tim Anderson in only 40 games has been insanely good at the plate. So that's it's been very interesting. J.P. Crawford also has been really really good, even though his defense has suffered a little bit this year, which has kind of set him back from you know tallying some of the advanced metrics. But um, I think I'll probably go with Jeremy Pena actually. He's been incredible with the glove, with the bat. I love Xander Bogaerts, but he is running a 389 BABIP as well, which is makes you feel like there's regression coming. Maybe he's been a little bit lucky. Jeremy Pena, 324 BABIP. He looks like he can probably sustain this level of production. And I mean, you look at their numbers very similar. Jeremy Pena, I think, has got a better glove for sure. Xander Bogaerts very average at shortstop at best, and I think if you look at all around value, I think Jeremy Pena is my guy here, so I'm gonna go with him. But you could make a definite argument for any of those guys, honestly.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to the two you mentioned, between Xander and Jeremy Pena. I kind of lean more Xander still, just because of the impact he's had offensively. He still has an 867 OPS. He still has a 145 WRC plus. Like, he is not as good a defender as Pena for sure, but I think the offensive side makes up for it a little bit more, with over Pena, but it is really close. And that's really a shout out to Jeremy Pena, because I was not high on him coming into the year. I was really worried about what the Astros were going to get from the shortstop position. And he's really proved, a lot of people wrong. And the fact that he's in this conversation and we're talking about him, being a potential all-star game starter over guys like Carlos Correa, who he replaced, over Xander Bogaerts, over Tim Anderson, who's had been great the last couple of years. We didn't even mention Bo Bichette, because the type of year he's had isn't been all-star worthy so far. And Corey Seager, the same thing. So Jeremy Pena has really been a feel-good story. I'll go ahead and give him the vote for in this ballot as the our all-star game starter
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and one other thing on those American League shortstops is that Tim Anderson, if he had played every game or close to every game, he would be far and away the leader here, probably the way he's played this year. But your sample size is a lot smaller with him, so I just don't know if he can keep up what he's done in this first. Because it's not fair to Jeremy Pena and Xander Bogaerts, who have 45, 50 more plate appearances than him, to when he's got when you're talking about rate numbers. So I think Tim Anderson though is definitely a good shout out here too.
Yeah, it's a very valid point for sure. But looking over at the National League side, who do you have over here?
Well, the National League side is as difficult as the American League side at shortstop. You really got four guys who could have a legit argument here. You got Tommy Edman has been extremely good. He leads in WAR in the National League shortstops. 15 stolen bases is big. He's got hit 278 with a 355 on base, a 418 slugging. That's a 124 WRC plus, but his glove has also been incredible. Dansby Swanson started off the first month of the season was one of the worst hitter in the National League probably, and ever since then he's been one of the best hitters in the National League. He's been insane this last month, and he's brought his numbers all the way up to a 292 average, a 356 on base, and a 460 slugging. And yeah, he also hit a homer tonight, so those numbers can go up even more. Above a 130 WRC plus, and he's had an incredible glove at shortstop as well. Uh, 9 stolen bases for Dansby too has been really nice. Francisco Lindor's had a bit of a renaissance year, although his offensive numbers are down from those two guys a little bit. And then Trey Turner's been really solid at the plate too. Um, Although defensively he's not quite the same as those top three. And so definitely a very interesting, they're very interesting pick here. I think it's probably between Edman and Swanson, and I might. Man, it's tough between those two because Dansby's been so hot the last month, but Edman's kind of been this the whole year. So I might go Tommy Edman just because he's been like this all year. But man, I don't know. It's hard to pick against Dansby with the numbers he's putting up right now.
Yeah, and I'm not quite sure why Tommy Edmonds on the ballot on as a shortstop to
Yeah.
begin with. He has 48 games played at second this year and 20 at shortstop, so that doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. I think if he was in second, that'd be a really great
Yeah.
conversation between Jazz, Edmond, and McNeil for sure.
Edmund would be running away with second base.
At shortstop though, I don't know. I really feel like it, at least to me, it comes down to Swanson and Trey, and Swanson just has the edge, because he's so much better defensively. Um, with value wise, there, even though the offensive numbers, they're really dang close as well. 128 WRC plus to a 130. A lot of the counting stats look pretty similar as well. So to me, I really think it's
But
probably Dansby at this point. Where if you would have said that to begin the year or after the first month of the season, anyone would be laughing at you.
yeah, I was gonna say too. In fact, Dansby Swanson, he's got the same WRC plus now after tonight as Trey Turner. They see
Well,
hit a home run and see it. They're both at 130 now. So,
LA hasn't started yet, so give him a second.
oh yeah, there you go. That's true.
So, but yeah, I'll pick Dansby for sure for that one. So let's go ahead and look at the catcher position, which I think we might want to throw up. But in the national or in the American League, at least, I really think you're deciding between two options, and I don't know how you feel, but I kind of feel like Alejandro Kirk might be the pick.
Yeah, um, it's tough to pick this because catching position has been a little bit rough this year.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's tough. I mean, the number two in catchers and WAR is Jose Trevino from the
Mm-hmm.
Yankees, and he's only played 39 games.
Yeah.
So of course, but you got to remember too that Alejandro Kirk, he's played 52 games, but he DHs all the time. So um, now he's playing catcher more right now because of injuries to Danny Jansen, but still, you're kind of looking at him as more of a DH slash catcher, whereas Jose Trevino, every time he plays, he's catching. And Sean Murphy too, every time he plays, he's catching. Although he's not really a candidate for for the All Star game, but I guess it's hard to pick against Alejandro Kirk. I mean, I guess he's okay defensively ish and at catcher, and that he's been sick with the bat. I mean, his bat's been incredible. Only a 10% strikeout rate. He's hitting 315 with a 396 on base, a 463 slugging, 145 WRC plus. I mean, he's been really, really,
Well, I
really
don't know where
good.
Matt went there, but yeah,
I mean,
at
honestly,
least
his
for me, it
teammate
seems
Danny
like
Jansen,
Alejandro
if he had
Kirk is
played
going to be
all
the
these
far and
games,
away
he's got a 150 WRC
runner, at
plus.
least
But with
here.
those
I
injuries, he's
just
only
think the
played
lack of
19
games for
games.
Trevino,
But
even
I
though
think I'd
Kirk does
probably go with
DH
Alejandro
a good
Kirk.
bit amount of the time, he still plays a decent catcher when he's in there. And since he's on the ballot as a catcher, I think you got to go with him. Usually this award would be for a guy like Salvador Perez, who's really, really struggled this year so far. Um, Christian Vasquez has been pretty decent, but the OPS isn't really there. It really comes down to Kirk and Trevino, and I just think the games from Trevino, or from Kirk at least, is the reason why he's going to take this award. And then looking on the National League side, there's the runaway for catcher is Wilson Contreras for sure. What he's done so far this year: 268 average, 10 homers, an 899 OPS. He just kind of runs away with this award. Tyler Stevenson would be a great option if he was able to stay on the field, but he recently, I believe it was on Thursday, he just broke his thumb, so he's going to be out for another month. Kind of hard to pick him. Dalton Varsho has been another name, but he's been playing a lot of outfield. William Contreras is another interesting option, but he's not on the ballot as a catcher. He's on as a DH. So I think for this award, we'll go with, or for this vote at least, we'll go with Wilson Contreras for the catcher. Now let's go ahead and move on to the American League outfield position. We get to pick three from each of the outfield spots. So who do you have for your American League outfielders?
Well, I think the first one's going to be pretty obvious here. It's all going to start with
Manny
Aaron Judge.
Margot.
Yeah. Well,
Ugh.
Manuel Margot is actually on the list of not quite guys I would pick as my starter, but he's been really good. But the first guy is obviously going to start with Aaron Judge. He's just been insane this year. I mean, you look at him on the season, you know, um, a 194 WRC plus. He's hit 313 with 385 on base and a 674 slugging. He leads the majors in home runs. The guy's just been absolutely incredible. So he's definitely my number one. I think number two, it's hard to pick against Mike Trout. I know he had that little, stretch where he wasn't playing so well for a while there, but he's been
The
Mike
stats
Trout.
still back it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, he's still been insane. Um, so Mike Trout's obviously going to be there. 188 WRC plus, 293 average, 392 on base, 634 slugging, 16 home runs. Um, I am a little bit worried about his strikeout rate. He's been striking out an awful lot, but I mean, it's nothing red flag worthy or anything. And then my other guy, I would think about Taylor Ward because of the start he was on in LA and for the Angels. But with him being out a lot, he's still out right now. I think he's supposed to actually come back next week. But I think I'm probably going to go with my third one being Kyle Tucker. Um, he's it could it's hard him. I mean Buxton you could go with. Um, you know
Springer,
Springer you
even.
could go with. Yeah. I mean, it's tough between those guys. I mean, there's a bunch you could put on there, but I probably would go with Kyle Tucker. The guy's very underrated. He's got really the only difference between him statistically and um, well, Buxton's only played 46 games. I mean, that's the problem with Buxton. And I mean, he's been insane in those 46 games. He's actually been extremely unlucky. I really like what he's done. His approach has been better this year. It's still been his approach is still rough at the plate. He strikes out a ton and doesn't walk much, but it's been better than it has in the past. It's improved. But I mean, he's hit 18 home runs in 46 games. I mean, he's been extremely good. So but with the being 46 games, I think I probably go with Tucker just because of the sample. 10 more games. I mean, it is only 30 more plate appearances, but which is it's tough to pick between those guys. But I don't know. I'll probably go with Tucker. He's been really good. He's underrated. He doesn't get enough talk. So
Yeah, Tucker. I don't hate the Tucker pick at all. Buxton, you mentioned, like he's there. There's going to be an argument for him as well for what he's done. The average is low, but the impact he brings to the team, it's far and above a lot of what these other guys do. George Springer, we didn't mention much about him, but he's had a really good season as well. 56 games, 238 plate appearances as well. A 144 WRC plus, 282 average, 350 on base, 526 slugging. I mean, those are the only difference between him and Tucker. There is Tucker has 10 more on the point 10 on the on base percentage. They're really the big difference is George Springer's defensively has not been that great this year compared to all these other guys. So that's probably kind of sets him back a little bit more, out of that argument. But Kyle Tucker, I'm perfectly fine with him being our third option for the American League outfield as well. Jumping over to the National League side, I think this one's kind of wide open. There's only kind of one lock in my eyes for the National League outfield. What about you?
yeah, I think so. I think Mookie Betts obviously is a lock here. He's been really good this year. Having a bit of bounce back, I guess. I mean, last year he was really good, but he maybe wasn't quite his typical self. And this year he's been his typical self. He's definitely going to be my number one here. And then there's really a conglomerate of guys between, kind of between 1 and 2 WAR who have all been really good. Um, you look at I mean, Brandon Nimmo is a guy that could probably get some consideration. He's been improved defensively in center field. He's put up a 129 WRC plus. He's got one of the better approaches at the plate in the big leagues. The only problem with Brandon Nimmo, not much power, only 4 home runs, a 409 slugging percentage is a little rough. Ian Happ's actually been really good this year for the Cubs. He's a guy that you could maybe put in there. Micah Strzemski's been really good for the Giants. You know, I mean, it's tough. Um, it's tough to pick between all those guys. I mean, they're all kind of close together. But if I had to pick, I'd probably pick Nimmo and or it's tough to pick against. I mean, honestly, I'd probably pick Hap, and I mean Jurickson Profar has been really good too. But I'd probably go with Hap and Yastrzemski, honestly. Maybe Nimmo, but that slugging percentage is really low. So
Yeah, I would. I think Yastrzemski is another guy that has to be on there as well. Just the resurgence he's had this year, I think he's too good to pass up there. Nimmo and Hap, I think those are the other two I'm deciding between as well. Um, I just think the defensive, the jump in defensive numbers for Brandon Nimmo, especially playing center field, I think that kind of gives him the edge to me, even though maybe the other overall counting stats aren't quite the same or there to match up with Hap. I think defensively kind of sets him apart enough to get the vote for me. Um, I don't even, and I'm just looking to make sure, but I don't even see Profar on the ballot for
he
outfield.
might not be on the ballot because he's a
Oh
utility
no,
player.
he is right there.
Oh, okay, there you go.
So I do see him, but I do think it comes down to Nimmo and Hap, and I kind of lean Nimmo um, more than over Hap for sure. But looking over, we'll jump to the designated hitter. This is the last spot actually on the ballot, and then we'll talk about some starting pitching. But for the American League designated hitter, who do you got?
This is the most obvious pick I think we got. It's Jordan Alvarez. The guy's been insane at the plate. 315 average, 403 on base, 625 slugging, a 192 WRC plus. Um, just incredible at the plate. His strikeout rate is under 16% this year, which is a big improvement. He walks a good bit. His BABIP's kind of is really sustainable. This is probably the hitter he is now, which is scary. And and obviously as a DH, he's at every he's a all the time DH. So he's definitely the guy that I would go with here.
Yeah, Jordan's kind of ran away with it. If you asked me probably 2 weeks ago, I was saying that it would be between Jordan and JD Martinez, and it's still really close. I think Martinez is having, the batting average on balls in play is really high, but a 347 average, a 413 on base, 563 slugging, not slugging quite as much, only 7 homers this year compared to Jordan having 17. But the overall offensive numbers kind of look, right pretty close to the same. I mean, a 174 WRC plus to a 192 that leads for Jordan. That's kind of why he separated himself there. But JD Martinez is having a great season as well, and I wouldn't be, count him out of the designated hitter race at all as well for the American League. But looking over at the National League, we have, I think this one's pretty easy. You think it's Bryce Harper, just since he's listed here. It would have been an interesting conversation had he not been under the designated hitter list, but since he's here, I think he's the obvious and easy choice.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bryce Harper's been really good at the plate. Sucks that he's on the DH list because of injury, but obviously, I mean, he's far beyond the best here. Um, you know, I think other than him, you could make an argument. If it wasn't for Bryce Harper being there, you could make an argument definitely for William Contreras. He's been extremely good. It's tough with some of the DH stuff because I mean William Contreras is catching more than DHing, and I think the same could be said for a couple of the guys on the American League side, playing a lot more out. Like I think Andrew Vaughn's typically playing the outfield, right? I mean,
I think he's on the
Josh,
DH list too,
he's on the DH list here, but I think he typically plays outfield. He's
but
actually
yeah,
playing the field. Josh Donaldson's another guy is typically playing at third base and not just DHing. So, um, look at the National League list. I mean, Willie Contreras is, typically catching. The only reason he's on the DH list is because Travis d'Arnaud is there and they split time at catcher. I mean, you look at like Max Muncy plays in the field a lot, doesn't he? Still, I mean,
yeah,
second base. Yeah, I mean he's on the DH list. So it's weird that it comes out like that, but definitely I would vote for Bryce Harper. I do think that Albert Pujols will probably get a lot of votes because people are assuming this is his last year. Actually, he didn't. Did he announce this was his last year?
yeah.
But yeah, it was Wainwright's the guy that didn't announce it. It was his last year, but
Yeah.
but yeah, Albert Pujols, he'll probably get a lot of votes. But obviously, if we're picking based on merit, we're gonna pick Bryce
It
Harper. So
yeah, it's Harper. It also seems like, tell me if you get this as well. Like Pujols is gonna be at the All Star game. Like I think we can all kind of agree on that. Like they'll give him an honorary spot at least. I have that feeling like they've the precedent has been set, especially in other sports before, for a guy who's in his final season, the send off. Like he'll get an All Star game, he'll be there, even if it's like the manager's choice or something like that. Like he'll be at the game somehow. At least I get that feeling for sure. But yeah, I think it's easy. Bryce Harper here. You said the DH spot, especially in the National League, the American League. It's been so set in stone for a couple years, or for a few years, I should say, that we know how the DH works. The National League teams are just getting it, and they're more using it as like a utility spot more than anything, giving an extra day off to a guy out of injury, just getting them off their feet for an extra day off the field. Um, so that's why it's kind of, you have more of kind of a hodgepodge of guys. But since Bryce Harper's playing there and the way he's playing, um, it's the easy choice there. But that's it for our actual regular ballot that we will submit in. But we also wanted to pick who our All Star Game starters would be for each side. So who would you have for your American League All Star Game starter?
yeah, so there's several guys that you could go with here. I think that just to name five pitchers that should be in the running for it: Kevin Gossman, Tariq Skubal, Shane McClanahan, Alek Manoah, Nestor Cortez Jr. or Nestor Cortez, and maybe Justin Verlander too could be candidates. But I think I would go with Shane McClanahan. This guy's been insane. He has been. I mean, he's pitched 72 innings, which is a solid number. I think it actually is one of the tops in the American League. Um, so he's seventh in the American League in innings pitched. But you look at him, and he's a guy that has a um, excuse me. He's got a 187 ERA in those 72 innings, a 245 FIP, and a 202 xFIP, 12.1 strikeouts per nine, only 1.6 walks per nine. Um, he's getting the ball on the ground really well too. He's got that rare combination of lots of strikeouts, not a lot of walks, and gets the ball on the ground. And anytime you get that combination, you're in good shape. And this guy is he's lefty. He throws hard. He's fun to watch. He's electric. I think he should be the starter. Um, I think Nestor Cortez is probably going to get a lot of run for that, just because the story, and he's played pitching for the Yankees and stuff. But I'd go with Shane McClanahan. I think he's been the best so far.
Yeah, McClanahan would be the guy I would choose as well. Verlander's obviously right there, especially the comeback he's had. He leads the American League in innings pitched. He also has a 194 ERA, even though the FIP and the xFIP don't quite back that up at a 350 and 347. But I could definitely see Verlander getting a lot of run at potential starting the All Star game as well. Um, you know, other fun stories. Alex Manoah has been pretty good this year. A 167 ERA, a 296 FIP. Like I could see him getting a look, and even maybe Martin Perez, maybe not being a starter, the actual starter of the game, but being on the roster. He's made a tremendous comeback story this year for sure. After being a guy who's kind of middled around middle of the rotation to back end of the rotation guy for most of his career, and coming back to Texas where he originally started and having a great season to start with. But so that's for that's from the American League side. The starters, I think we both agree Shane McClanahan should be the guy. But looking at the National League, I think this is one's going to be even easier for us to agree on, and that's because it's going to be Sandy Alcantara.
Yeah, I mean, Sandy Alcantara is probably the guy to go for here. He's got 91 innings, which is insane at this point of the season, uh, in this day and age. Pitched and 168 ERA. Peripherals don't totally back that up, but they do expect him to be really good. Only 8 strikeouts per nine. I think that number actually probably comes up some as the season goes on. I think he typically would. I think he's just maybe been a little bit unlucky on his strikeouts. His stuff typically plays up better than that. 2.66 walks per nine, not too bad there. not giving up many homers at all. Gets ball on the ground a lot, weak contact, pitches deep into games. Is the big thing with him, though. He's such a workhorse. He saves a bullpen that's not really all that good to start with. And I think Sandy Alcantara is definitely going to be the guy here. Looking at some other guys, I mean, Joe Musgrove's been really good. He's actually got a better ERA than Sandy Alcantara, but he's pitched about 19 fewer innings, which is a pretty good bit. But he's been extremely good as well. A 150 ERA for him in 72 innings. Um, Look at Zach Wheeler has really turned around after a kind of a rough start to the season. He really has turned it around. He's been really solid. Some other guys in there. I mean, Corbin Burns, the defending Cy Young winner, has been really good. Um, he's still he'll be on the All Star team for sure. Pablo Lopez will definitely be on the All Star team. He's been really good, but if I was going for a starter, it would definitely be Sandy Alcantara right now.
Yeah, he far and away is the, even if you were talking about pick one starting pitcher, it would be him throughout the entire major leagues right now. He's just been so good this year. I know we've mentioned him a lot, but he's been so worthy about it the past couple seasons. But that will, that's technically not on our actual ballot, but we wanted to bring that to you guys as well. Is there anything else that you want to hit on All-Star game wise, or any other notable names you want to talk about?
I don't think so. I think I'm pretty I feel good about kind of the guys we picked. I think it's definitely fun to look at. Maybe the next week or two we can look at. We're almost halfway through the season. Um,
Yeah.
I think with the next few weeks, maybe we can look at some, like rookies that are doing really well, or pitchers, who are, I guess, kind of pitchers whoever start the All Star game. We kind of talk about this the same as the like Cy Young candidates or whatever, but
Yeah.
maybe some of those other awards, maybe some pitchers or who's standing out in certain aspects that we haven't really looked at so far. But definitely just a couple of weeks for that All-Star game, and after that things really tighten up. There's been a lot of interesting baseball recently. You had a lot of streaking teams. I mean, the Braves have won 13 straight games. The Phillies have won, I think they had won 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 11, and I think tonight they were up, but I think they blew the lead in the ninth inning tonight. And then you've got teams like the Angels that are streaking in a bad way, but that maybe they've gotten off the schneid just a little bit the last couple days. But definitely a lot of streakiness going on right now, and some races tightening up, some races spreading out, and but we'll keep an eye on it for you, and we'll talk be back with it next week. So
Yeah, with you said, it's getting ready to be that halfway point of the year. Maybe we jump back to look at our preseason predictions wise, and see where we're standing on awards and kind of that. That'd be, another fun thing to do as well. Just wanted to mention as well, since we filled out the All-Star game ballot, you can go to MLB.com/All-Star ballot, and you can put your own ballot in there. You can vote up to 5 times per day. The phase one it goes through from June 8th through June 30th. That's for your favorites. And then from July 5th to July 8th, they'll have a 3-day where it's the finalists at each position and you pick the starter there. So if you want to go create your own ballot, just go to MLB.com/All-Star ballot, and you can vote up to 5 times per day as well. So you can get your favorite players to Los Angeles for the All-Star game. But I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Batflip Podcast. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next week.
thanks everybody.